Hello.
Hello. Is the
Hi.
audio good on my end?
Yep, I can hear you.
Perfect.
Do you want to share your screen or should I share it?
I don't mind. I can share it if you want. Um, oh,
Oh,
I
okay.
don't know
It's
if you
okay. It's okay. Let me stop it. Yeah, you can share it.
did it work? Is it okay?
Yep, I can see it.
Okay, perfect. Wait, if I does it change the slide?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. That's fine.
Have you got the notes and everything with you?
Yeah, yeah.
Cool. Yeah, if you can hear us, you can let the
Yeah,
students.
you.
Oh yeah, sorry. I think I'm unmuted now. For some reason, I don't know why it wasn't letting me unmute. But yeah, I'll add all the students in. I've made you both co-hosts, so you should be able to present and things. So yeah, if there's any problems, just let me know. But hopefully, it should be okay. I'll admit everyone now.
Thank you.
Also, from your side, are you able to admit as well, or is it just? I think it might just be me that's able to admit them.
Yeah,
Um,
I think it's letting me, so I
Okay,
can admit.
perfect, perfect. Yeah, if you just click admit all, and then yeah, I think that's pretty much everyone. So feel free to introduce yourselves and then kind of get started.
okay.
Okay.
Sean, do you want to go first?
Great. Well, good evening, everyone. Hope you're all doing great. My name is Shahad, and I'm a third year medical student at the University of Cambridge at Newnham College.
Hi, I'm Shadia. Similar names, so sorry for the confusion. And I'm a second year geographer at the University of Cambridge, and I'm also at Newnham.
Mhm.
Um,
So
so, do you want
now I was just going to say we know each other from
to go?
previously, but
Yeah,
we didn't plan it.
we
Yeah.
just so happened the coincidence. Small world. But today we're just going to be giving you a run through of some interview stuff, a bit about what Oxbridge Mind is, what they offer, and we'll also be doing some kind of Q&A type things. I'm hoping everyone can see our screens right now in the presentation. And there should be like a code at the top for you guys to join, and that way you can kind of interact with us, ask questions, answer some of our questions, and things like that.
Exactly. So if you go on menti.com, just at the top of the presentation, you can see the code that you can sign in with, and then we'll have some Q&A sessions where you can pop in and ask us questions or answer some of our questions as well, because we'll be having some interactive sessions as we go along. Um,
Okay, so what is Oxbridge Mind? So this whole thing will be covering a little bit um, about it. Oh, if anyone has any questions, by the way, you can just put them into chat as well. So should we start with this slide? Okay,
Great.
so what do you guys already know about Oxbridge interviews? As I said, just go on to Mentimeter and write in your answers, and we should be able to see some of them.
So you can see already one person responded and said it's panel-based, which is complete, which is great. I know someone has said they can't see the Menti code. So I'll type it in the chat for everyone. So once you go on there, we'll literally just ask you to type in the code. So I'll put it in the chat for anyone who can't see it, and then you can just copy and paste it.
Panel-based thinking, not memorizing, academic conversation, academically focused, engaging, focused on academics. So there's lots of ideas about it being kind of academic focused. You might get pre-reading, nice. Thinking out loud, focusing on how you think and adapt. Great answers. So we'll probably be addressing some of these aspects within this presentation, but also you can ask a bit more about any of the things or preconceptions that you might have during the Q&A section.
Okay, so on this slide, it's also a little bit of an engagement to kind of think about some of your pre-misconceptions that you might have. So again, on Menti, you should be able to rank some of these statements that we've got here from the most true to the least true. So we've got 3 different statements for you. So think about which ones do you think might be more true, which ones might be a little bit more false.
Seeing a lot of people going for first being the most true. Oxbridge interviews are very academically challenging.
So it's good to see that being pulled is a bad thing is ranked the least, because it's definitely a lot of people do think if they get pulled, oh, it means that I might not actually get an offer later on, or maybe I will get rejected. So there's a lot of pre-misconceptions about being pulled. I definitely had those when I was applying. But if you're invited for another interview, another college, please don't read into it too much. It doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to be rejected from your first college, and doesn't mean that the first interview necessarily went badly. To be honest, no one really knows why colleges do pooling. It's a bit of a mystery to everyone. Even being here and speaking to some admissions tutors, I don't think I've got a full idea about why people get pooled. There might be some logic to it, I guess. Lots of people have different reasons, but it might literally be as random as like the letter of your surname. So there's really not a rationale behind it. I don't know if you know any explanation behind it, Shadia, why people get fooled?
I don't know either. It's no one really specifically says it. I think some people, it might be, spaces become filled in one college, and because they want everyone to kind of have a chance to, go to Cambridge or Oxford, they'll give you a place at a different college that might be looking for people to fill their spaces. I don't know. That's just one thing that I've heard. But it's never a bad thing. And if you're like dead set on going to this one college and then you suddenly think, oh my God, I've been pulled, it's not a bad thing. Everyone always ends up pretty happy. And every single college has its positives and negatives. So don't be too disheartened if you do get pulled. It's not bad at all.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people also say that definitely, like, if you are able to get in a particular college, or if you fit in Cambridge, you can get into any college. So there might just be some year this college might just be super popular, so there was just not enough places, like you were saying, Shadia. So I'm glad to see that no one has ranked this as being the most true, which is great. So if we move on to our second most false one, you're not allowed to disagree with your interviewer. So with this one, I actually think in some cases it might be good to disagree, especially because in some cases they play devil's advocate. They might literally say like the most wrong thing. And then, yes, they're amazing academics, they're top in their fields. And then you think, I can't disagree with someone like this. They've done like 30 years of research in this field. Who am I to question? If they say, I don't know, like sodium isn't a metal. It's definitely not a metal. Maybe I've always just had it wrong, but that's definitely further from the truth. They do want to see sometimes that you are someone who's critical, someone who's analytical, and also someone who's going to stand their ground, especially in the opinions that you come up with. So if you are not convinced by an alternative point that they come up with, it's okay to say, I can see your point, but what about this? What about my point? Give an alternate point of view. It's completely fine to disagree with them. And sometimes, like I said, they do it on purpose. They just want to see how you will react under that pressure. Will you actually stand your ground and argue your point? Do you have anything to add about that one, Shadia? I know it's slightly different because I think more on like the sciences, it's very
Yeah,
hard sometimes to disagree, whereas because I know you do more of a humanity. Yours is
yeah,
definitely a mix as well, though.
yeah, absolutely. Like, I think within your interviews, I think for humanities especially, it's kind of they want you to challenge them a bit. Like, it's very conversational and like unlike how a lot of STEM subjects, there is kind of a bit of a right answer to have sometimes. um like if they're asking you for like an equation for something, there is a right answer, whereas humanities, it's kind of like, oh, like what do you think on it? So you should never feel afraid to be like, oh, like, you know i I know you've said this, but I also thought about it in this way. And the interviewer always kind of will direct you if you're really going to like the wrong place, basically.
Yeah. I mean, having said all of those points, there's definitely also a fine line between confidence and arrogance and kind of just seeming determined or being completely stubborn and not being willing to change your opinion. So if you do get convinced by an alternative opinion, you could admit that and be willing to change your opinion, be willing to kind of adapt your answer to this new information that you get given or to this new information. But overall, don't be scared to challenge them. Moving on to our first point, which seems to be the most true, Oxford interviews are very academically challenging. Definitely not impossible, however. They want to see, rather than a specific that you're going to be giving them, they want to see how you're able to apply information, especially when you're faced with something that you're not familiar with, something completely new. Are you able to take that information in quickly and be able to apply it to a completely new scenario? Having said that, I know someone did ask if it's all academic or can they ask you about other things like your volunteering or work experience. This might be a little bit more geared towards medicine, but there have been cases definitely in those Oxbridge interviews where they do ask you about those instances, some more kind of like questions about why did you apply there or why medicine, or talking a little bit about applying your work experience and your volunteering and what you learned from them. These might come up, but definitely more often than not, there will be some academic questions in the interview. Some colleges will do one more that is based on like applications to medicine and your work experience and things like that, and a more academic one. It depends on the university and sometimes on the college as well. Um, is it different, do you think, for some of the humanities subjects, Shadia?
um yeah, it can be, I think it completely depends subject to subject, but like the humanities ones tend to be a lot more like free flowing, and they won't necessarily ask you something that's like got an exact answer, I guess. Like sometimes, obviously I'm speaking for myself, but sometimes I've heard people, have to come up with like a research project on the spot, and that's quite like an abstract thing. So for example, in my personal one, they just asked me to come up with a research project, and I was like, okay, I'm gonna have to randomly come up with this now. There tends to be more kind of out of the box thinking kind of questions. So we'll go through some example questions here, and we'd love to hear what you guys would answer for these as well. But obviously, there's no, there's not really a wrong or right answer, so feel free to kind of go with whatever you think. So in terms of this question, it is how many people pass through Heathrow in a day? So everyone can pop your answers in the chat. And also, if anybody wants to say why specifically they've come up with this or like how, that's also completely fine. So, Shahad, what would you What would you say to this question? How would you
So
answer it?
I could say Heathrow is one of the busiest airports in the world because, many people kind of want to go on a holiday. So let's say 60 million people in a year. So if everyone in the UK goes on holiday, then the population of the UK is around 60 million. So maybe we can assume 60 million in the world, in sorry, in a year. And then this would give us just under 200,000 a day if you divide it by kind of over the number of days within a year.
Nice. So we can kind of analyze that answer a little bit and think about what's been said. And then I'll also give you guys an answer, especially. So, Shad, why do you think that would be considered a good or bad answer? Like, what would you say?
So, I mean, some of the answers that we've got over here, they're not expecting you to get the right answer, but also they don't just want you to make like a random guess out of nowhere. So, the answer that I said, it might seem like there is some reasoning behind it. Everyone in the UK going on holiday, divide the population by the number of days in the year. But this although it's not a pure guess, it could still benefit from a little bit more structure and some more in-depth explanations of what is going on. So it might seem like my answer is definitely a little bit one up from like a pure numerical guess, but it's definitely not there yet, especially for what they might be looking for in an interview. So for those questions, you don't want to estimate a number without some reasonable assumption, showing how you're going to break down this difficult problem into small little steps. I know it seems impossible at the beginning, but by breaking it down little by little and explaining some of the assumptions and some of the limitations that your answer might have, even if it's completely wrong, completely off, at least you would have showed them your thought process. So, Shadia, do you want to give a better answer than the one that I
Yes,
just given?
I will do. So this answer that I'm about to give is a lot more kind of fleshed out in terms of like reasoning for the answer and how you got to it. With these kind of questions, they don't expect you to get an exact answer. They just want to see how you're thinking about the answer and how you get from, your thoughts to an actual like figure or like a roundabout figure. So let's assume that we're just counting departures and just counting people that are going onto the plane. So flyers, staff, pilots, etc. And we're not actually counting people that are just walking through Heathrow, such as cleaners or, maybe people that are dropping others off. So if we have 2 runways in Heathrow, one for arrivals and one for departures, we're going to focus on departures. If each plane takes about 10 minutes on the runway, we can have about 6 planes per hour. We can assume that Heathrow is open for 24 hours a day with peak and non-peak times. So in peak times, let's make the assumption that it's between 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. and 5 p.m. to 8 p.m. So we're obviously going to tend to have a lot more passengers during this time and more people per plane. So we're going to assume that a plane has a capacity of 400 people. And in peak time, we have a 100% fill rate. So, the whole capacity is full. This gives us 6 planes times 6 hours times 400 people per plane, which gives us just over 14,000, let's say. So then in non-peak times, we have 18 hours a day, and there's probably less planes taking off because there's just less people. So we're going to assume a 75% fill rate. So let's say 4 planes an hour, 18 hours, 300 passengers. Timesing all of that together, it's just over 21,000. And when we add the non-peak times with the peak times, it gives us around 35,000 a day. So that seems really like long-winded and a bit complicated, but it's more about the fact that you're logically going through and breaking down. So the fact that you're actually thinking about, Heathrow is a very busy place, but there's times where it's busier compared to not busier. So you just have to kind of be careful with how you're going about a question. It's okay to kind of take your time and pause a little bit. They don't expect you to come off just from hearing the question and be like, okay, like I'm going to give you 5,000 as a figure when you've not shown your kind of working out and reasoning and thought behind it.
It's definitely okay as well to take some time and say, can you just give me, a few seconds to plan my answer out? This is something I definitely did in my interviews, like the real ones. I always said, if it's a long question, I'd be like, just give me a few seconds to organize my thoughts. And you actually come off as someone who is really confident and is willing to take time to structure their answers. And it's completely fine to do that. It will also allow you to think about, is my answer an overestimate, an underestimate? Is there some things I didn't consider? And thinking critically about your answer will also be literally one of the skills that they're looking for. I'm sure literally in every subject, go on the websites, they will tell you we are looking for critical thinking skills. Um, so all of these are definitely good methods to show them that you are, someone who's teachable, someone who will be able to do well within the academic environment.
Absolutely. So we will move on to a bit of a kind of general Q&A now. So you guys can feel free to add whatever questions you have. While we're waiting on that, maybe we should look at the Zoom chat as well, but preferably kind of add them onto here so that everyone else can see the questions too. Interview top tip, Shahad. I think mine would be a smile goes quite a long way. Like, it's okay to be nervous, but just go in there kind of like, okay, like, I'm gonna try my best. And everyone is human. Like, you have to think that the person who's interviewing you, they're not trying to catch you out. They're trying to do the best for you in a way. So kind of have that in the back of your mind whenever you're going into an interview, I'd say.
I would definitely say remaining calm and just trying to structure your answer. It's definitely more about your thinking. Don't worry if you don't have your whole A level and GCSE specs memorized. They're literally just trying to see how you think. So thinking out loud and breaking down a problem into small little chunks. Thinking about it as a discussion, you can definitely ask them questions if there's something that you don't know, or you can bring in things and be like, is this related, and make links. I think it's definitely somewhat more of like an enjoyable experience. I know it won't feel like that, but thinking back towards my interviews was more of a discussion. It's more about my thinking. It wasn't really about, do you know this fact or not? So the more you think about it like that, I think it calms you down a little bit and makes you definitely be more confident within that environment.
Definitely. Does it penalize you to not know the answer to an academic question? Um, I don't, they don't necessarily like ask you to regurgitate a fact or anything like that. So it's very unlikely that they'd be like, oh, you don't know this mountain on this planet? Like, what do you mean? But usually they kind of stir you towards the right answer, or like they nudge you towards. So if you're like, I don't know, doing a maths question, for example, in an interview, and you're kind of struggling, they might, give you a hint of like a formula that could be used or a way to do it. But they don't necessarily like tick you off and like say no, like this person doesn't know which way to go with this question, so they're not going to get to Cambridge or Oxford.
They definitely do build you up from the knowledge that you do know. So they're going to try to question you until they get to a point that you don't know. And if you haven't studied a topic, it's completely fine to be like, I have not done this yet. But from what I know, perhaps it could work something similar. Could you give me some background, for example? It's completely fine. And normally they don't test you on difficult knowledge. So for example, in like a lot of the medicine and biomedical sciences, or some of the natural sciences, if it's like a biology related question, they might ask you, what is a gene, for instance, something that you might be able to get from like your GCSE knowledge even. Okay.
My interview's online. Is it okay to do an iPad or should I use a computer? You can use whatever. I would just personally suggest something that has something where you can type or like write something with, just because in case they show like resources or things like that. I'm pretty sure a lot of the interviews are still being held online. And I know someone else asked about if you should have pen or paper, always have pen and paper on hand. I'm pretty sure a lot of the colleges will give you kind of guidelines on technology and stuff to use, so don't worry about it. They always specify things like that. Do you have multiple interviews or is it just one? Depends.
Definitely on the college and the university, but usually for Cambridge, I had two interviews, I think. Oxford, it depends on the college as well, because I know people get assigned sometimes to different colleges and they might have multiple interviews. So a lot of people will have two interviews per college or something like that. There
Yeah.
might be like 6 interviews at Oxford. But it definitely depends, and each one is going to be around 20 to 30 minutes. They're not insanely long interviews.
But I think generally it ranges from like 1 to 3 interviews. I feel like 3 is the most I've heard, unless I don't know, there's some special considerations or things like that.
Yeah.
Okay, what else is there? From your 4 interviews, how many are academic or general or ethical?
Again, it depends on the subject. So, um, from what I know about the medicine interviews, at least at Cambridge, is that there will usually be one that's more academic and one that's a little bit more general, but they could mix and match the information between them. So there isn't necessarily like an interview where you go in and they can't ask you a particular question, definitely. It definitely all interlinks together. Is it slightly different for some of the other subjects you know about, Shadia?
Yeah, it can depend. So I think for mine, there wasn't really like a distinction. Like everyone kind of knows that geography has a human and a physical, but I had 2 interviews and it wasn't that one was focused on human, one was focused on physical. So I think it does completely depend. From what I've heard, a lot of them kind of, because the interviews are structured in a way where it's kind of free flowing, I think they all kind of like merge into each other. They don't tend to have too rigorous of a baseline, I guess. How much reference is there to your personal statement? I think it depends again on subject, college, things like that. Some people I know did talk about the personal statement. Me personally didn't really touch on my personal statement at all.
But definitely in preparation, know your personal statement well. Any books, papers, articles
Yes,
that you mentioned, do know them inside out. And also, if they haven't read your personal statement, you can use them as reference. It's okay to double, triple use some of the content that you've read in multiple places. You can always make links
exactly.
and come back to those.
How much of the interviews discussing the same question? Will they ask about predicted grades? No, I don't think they will. That's all kind of like the technical stuff. They have all of that admin information. They won't waste time asking about it. How long did you prepare for the interview? And for Shad, how different was the interview compared to other medical school interviews?
So, to be honest, in preparation for the interview, I didn't get a lot of time before the email. And because Oxbridge interviews are generally known for that, they won't give you like a month. And then they'll be like, your interviews in a month. They will generally be very, very like short turnover. I remember one of my other medical interviews, I got like a weekend. It was like Friday evening. They were like, it was Monday morning. So there's not a lot of time. But in preparation for it, since I applied and things like that, I just made sure that I knew my A-level specification well enough so at least I have like some of the basic ideas, maybe not like insane details, but some of the big ideas and just practicing. So I tried to set up practice interviews with my teachers and I was like, give me a topic that we've studied about and then we can just discuss it together and maybe you can try to um like challenge me a little bit with it. So that was kind of like the majority of my preparation. I also videoed myself and rewatched the videos, answering some questions from different question banks and things like that. In terms of how different the interview was compared to other medical school interviews, definitely the other ones weren't as academic. So they're not going to ask me in like a UCL interview or in I think I remember applying to Birmingham and a few other universities as well, which are more multiple mini interview styles. Those have definitely set topics in every station that you would go around in. There were like role plays, for example, in some of my other interviews. It was definitely more focused on your work experience, the volunteering, and the skills that a doctor generally has. Whereas the Cambridge and Oxford interview are going to be more focused on trying to test your understanding, test how much you're going to be able to apply more academic information. So that was like the major difference between both.
Nice. had done this. What did you gain after the interview and what did you learn? That's a really interesting question, actually. I think I learned that it's sometimes really good to be challenged on your thoughts. Like, I'd never been in a situation where I was that on the spot with coming up with ideas, thinking outside the box, being challenged, being pushed further. And that is what Cambridge and Oxford does. They're trying to mimic a supervision within your interview. And you might even go to the interview and realize, I actually don't like this style of teaching as much. And maybe you realize you don't want to go to Oxbridge. Like, I've had friends that went to the interview, did great in the interview, realized they didn't want to necessarily go afterwards. But I think it does teach you a lot about yourself and a lot about how to generally prepare for an interview as well, which is a life skill that you're going to need over and over again, regardless of whatever you go into.
Oh, me? Sorry.
If you want.
Personally, yeah, no. It's very similar. I think I found that I took it as an opportunity to talk to experts in their field. Some of those people are amazing. Like they discovered things. So I was like, even if I don't get into Cambridge and Oxford, I wanted to get that privilege of discussing different topics in science and engaging with them and being tested on my knowledge and my opinions as well, and being able to just come up with things on the spot. So I definitely took it forward that I wanted to be in that kind of environment of tested in a supervision style. So it was like a privilege to be sitting with academics that were pioneers in their field. So I took it as that kind of experience, whether I would get in or not.
That's so nice. What happens if you're really stuck on a question? My advice would be take a few seconds to yourself, breathe, really look at the question again. Even if you are still stuck, speak aloud and try and formulate your thoughts because they don't necessarily like they're not going to penalize you for coming up with thoughts. They prefer that. They want to see how you're kind of going towards something. And if you're going completely in the wrong direction, then they will steer you towards a bit more of the way they're trying to get you to answer it. But also, if there's something in the question particularly that you're stuck on, for example, like a topic or a keyword, you can ask them. Feel free to ask them, could you define this for me? Could you let me know what you mean by this, etc. Like, I remember in my interview there was the word echo chamber, and echo chamber is not a question is not a word that is used on a daily basis. Thankfully I did know what it meant, but in that instance, if you didn't know, you can just ask them. They're very like free with it.
Yeah, definitely. I think buy yourself some time to think as
I
well if you
think
wanted to. Yeah, I was going
yeah,
to say, do you want
absolutely.
to
I
move
think we
on?
might have to move on. Yeah.
We will have some
Okay.
time to answer more questions at the end, but just for the sake of time.
Um, so,
Okay, so we've got another kind of interview
this
question for
is
you
the
guys.
first time.
Sorry?
Um, are we on the right side? Are we both on the right side? Sorry, you just dropped out for a second.
Oh yeah, we're on the slide about what makes Oxford and Cambridge stand out, and then to you,
Okay,
right?
perfect.
Yeah. So again, if you
Perfect.
could let us know some of your thoughts about this. They could
Feel
ask you this
free
in an
to.
interview scenario as well.
I
think there might be a lag as well. This is why I'm hearing you like a little bit late at the same
Yeah, I
time.
think there is a bit of a lag.
So, college system, prestige and teaching style. The small group teaching is definitely very specific to Oxbridge.
Mhm.
I think the supervision small group teaching is coming up a lot as a theme.
Research, prestige, history, level of education, aspect of tutorials, availability of resources, supervisions, So lots of mention of supervisions, the teaching style, etc. So should I go for answering it?
So do you want to answer it in case you were asked about it in an interview scenario, for instance?
Yes. So an answer that I could say is Cambridge is a world-leading university. When growing up, I always wanted to go to Cambridge because it's such a great university. I know I would be able to get the best education at this university and really thrive and make loads of friends. It would really help me in my future too. Cambridge is one of the most respected universities in the world. So we're just going to dissect that answer a bit. When answering a question like this, it can come off a bit like generic if you answer it in the way of, I've always wanted to go to Cambridge. It's got the best education. It's great to make friends, because you can kind of do that in a lot of different universities. So Cambridge can really easily be replaced with Harvard or MIT in my answer, and it would still hold true. So a better answer could be something like, what Shahad is going to say now.
Okay, so maybe I could say one aspect that really attracts me to Cambridge is the unique supervision system. I think I would really benefit from 2 to 3 supervisions a week with a small class, debating and kind of discussing the week's kind of topics with world-leading academics and my fellow classmates. The college system is also quite appealing because it's quite different from other universities around the country. It's great to be kind of part of a smaller, really tight-knit community, which means that you get to know people a lot easier. And it's great that every college has its own facilities, its own identity. They'll all have kind of their own libraries and dining halls. And all of this is within a 5-minute walk. I mean, if you're in Unum, it'll probably be within a 1-minute walk. But all of these are kind of just a little bit of a way to personalize it. And I think a lot of you guys have already said that in all of your responses, mentioning the supervision system. For me personally, I applied to Newnham and currently I'm at Newnham as well, thankfully. So I made my answer when I was applying, knowing that I've got an interview there, very personalized, talking about the fact that I wanted to be inspired by world leading like females in the field, especially in science, when it's quite dominating by male researchers, which they do a great job, but as a female in the field, sometimes you want an like figure that will be a role model to you within there. So when applying to Newnham, I did apply for that reason, and I made my answer very, very tailored as well to the college. So I guess if you apply to a college, you can also make your answer tailored to that and why you applied there and the particular like history surrounding it. For example, I think Unum actually has a whole history about how it was developed. It was like a hospital during the World War. There's so much behind it. So if you research the college a little bit more as well before going into your interview, or even a small specific part, for instance, Cambridge medicine, you can actually intercalate in any subject you want, like engineering in your 3rd year, which is not available anywhere else. So researching the course a little bit and what makes it different even from Oxford, if you want to apply to Cambridge or vice versa, then that could show that you're really passionate about going here. It's not simply about, oh, it's a world-leading university, I just want to get in there. You actually know what you're getting yourself into.
Yeah, absolutely. Top tip is just make it personable. Give it a bit more than kind of the statistics that anybody can find, Talk about what sets it apart, and just make sure your answer isn't like a generic copy and paste that you can use for, every single place or every single university. Okay, let's move on to the next question. Sorry. So how do you think you could prepare for the Oxbridge interview? So from what we've kind of said and talked about, what are some ideas of what you guys think is beneficial? Pop your answers on the screen. Answers for frequently asked questions, practice interviews, practice talking through your thoughts. Definitely try and get people to do kind of mock interviews with you, or just talk about like your personal statement with you and things like that. I found it really beneficial to obviously do interviews with my teachers, especially like my geography teacher, etc., but also interviews with people that don't do your subject, because they can really start to ask questions that might be a bit out of the box and not along the kind of usual stream of questioning?
I think definitely discussions to show your passion. I remember there was a Japanese teacher. I never studied Japanese, but she was at my school and he was just really interested in different topics. And sometimes I would sit there, she was my tutor, and I would tell her about COVID vaccines and how they work. And I would try to explain it in like the simplest way because she didn't have like a background. I can't be using like the word like complicated words in science. So I had to break down things. And explain it in a really nice and engaging way. So it just showed that it helped me build up that passion in my tone, which is you might be passionate about something, but you might find it difficult to show it. But when talking to her, it just helped me to develop that skill. So, like Shadia said, finding people that might not know anything about your subject and trying to explain it to them, literally like in the most simple, basic way, will help you to build those skills as well.
Absolutely.
Um,
Plan personalized answers. Also with planning and making notes and things like that, sometimes it can be quite hard to plan answers because the questions that they ask are quite like out of the box, or like they're not going to be repeated questions from like last year, if that makes sense. So just don't be too bogged down in writing down and trying to memorize an answer, but just have like thoughts about, what you could say if asked, kind of the casual, repeated questions, things like that. And if you've like read a really interesting, just keep reading around your subject. They could ask you like, okay, what in the news have you seen that relates to your subject? So you want to be able to bring up relevant case studies, or something that you might have seen in a book or in media, etc. So doing a little bit of kind of outside reading is always really good. But we'll go on to some of the tips that we have. So we've got staying calm and rereading your personal statement. So at an Oxbridge interview, oh, give me 1 second, sorry. Okay, so at an Oxbridge interview, the tutors, whoever's interviewing you, they just want an opportunity to meet you and learn a bit about you. So they won't try to trip you up. They'll try to understand that you're nervous. But if you can show them your best side and your intelligence, then you maximize your chances to actually achieve an offer. If you come across as being comfortable and confident, then you're more likely to impress them. So our kind of Oxbridge interview advice is that if you can practice an interview type scenario with a teacher or tutor, it's going to help you stay calm. Again, reread your personal statement. They are more likely to kind of ask you a couple of things, maybe about your personal statement or about topics relating to it. It might not directly be something in your personal statement. So you want to make sure that you actually know what's in your personal statement and that you can go and kind of talk further about it. You can kind of do that with the help of the Oxbridge interview guide that we offer. And if you mention a book that you read, for example, make sure you know kind of the plot of the book, the key ideas, the themes, the thesis of the book. So another bit of advice is that if you've mentioned some work experience, make sure you know what the work experience entailed, what you learned from it as well, so that you can actually answer the questions about it. The biggest thing they kind of want to know about is, once you've done something, how did you learn from it and kind of utilize skills or gain skills from it, if that makes sense?
So we do have our Oxbridge interview guide that you can purchase if you wanted to kind of get some help about how to talk about your personal statement and integrate it. I think we also talked about we have a few kind of things we'll recommend for you at the end on dealing with the interview because it is such a overwhelming kind of um time. Did we have another? No, that's coming up. So this is another kind of interview type question that might come up. Should students get a full or a partial refund for online teaching? So do you want to type your answers in and let us know what you think? In case you get asked this in an interview scenario, what would you say?
we got in terms of responses? So, Shahad, do you want to give your answer for this?
Yeah, so if I show you like the ideal way to answer this, hopefully, is saying, firstly, this is kind of like a really complex question. On the one hand, a lot of students might have gotten like a reduced quality of education during the pandemic, especially with many students kind of struggling to engage within a video call, which I don't know if you guys went through it, but I had it in my A-level exams and it was awful. So I can see why someone might want a refund if they haven't been able to have in-person teaching, and that they do in one aspect or another deserve a refund for this because it wasn't the full learning experience that they would have had. But on the other hand, it's important to consider where this money is going to be coming from if you were to be giving a refund. So universities pay their lecturing staff predominantly from the university fees that were collected. And many university staff do put in just as much effort, whether it's in person or whether it's online. So it's kind of equally as difficult for them to also connect with the students. It's not like they've had it easier just because it's online. So one of the drawbacks of kind of refunding those fees would be a reduction of staff wages in order to get that money, which I also don't think might be fair. So it's definitely got both sides of the question or both arguments I can see from the lecturer perspective and from the student perspective. So there wouldn't be one right solution to solve this. So being balanced in your answer in this way and considering both sides, in most questions, I would always try to say, try to consider another point of view, even if you strongly feel one particular way, because they will see you as someone who is willing to explore other points of views and other opinions. So this is kind of the answer, the ideal way of answering a lot of those difficult ethical questions that you are not sure what exactly would be the correct answer to them.
Absolutely. Okay, so I'm just aware of timing, so we'll go on to the kind of next part of this. Shah, do you want to take it away?
Yeah, so these are just a few tips that we've got for you, just like Shadi explained the first two. These are the next two that we've got. So showing your passion and practicing talking to other people about your subject. We've already touched on those a little bit, but studying at Oxbridge is actually quite hard. I know me and Shadi would both agree the amount of work that we have to do, but you spend many hours a day learning about a subject that you might be quite passionate about, and also from world-renowned people. The people that I've seen, I would read a research paper and they would have written it. They discovered whole things. So it's actually insane, and you need to be able to show them the passion that you are interested in your subject enough to be able to study there. You have that drive, you have that motivation and commitment. Now, you need to make sure that you explain in your interview why your subject is important and why you're good at it and why you will be able to thrive in such an environment. So there will be tutorials or supervisions like we've already discussed. And so our advice would be that you convince them that you would be able to do well within that kind of environment. In terms of practicing talking to people about your subject, this does sound strange, but like I was saying earlier, with people who might have nothing to do with your subject, it's a skill to be able to make someone as passionate about your subject as you are when they might have nothing to do with it at all. So you will be more than likely in the course of explaining a subject to someone to iron out the details, iron out anything that doesn't really make sense or that you even don't fully understand, and make sure that you make it engaging and interesting to them. And this is exactly what you want to do in an interview scenario. If you do this, they will see that you are someone who understands it really well, because someone who breaks down a subject, it means that they do understand it in a lot of depth, and also you are very passionate and committed to the subject. Okay, so over to you.
How would you guys answer this question? What do you not like about this college? Just wait for some of the responses to come up. So, for this question, it wants you to kind of strike up a balance between being honest and being critical. So you want to avoid going on kind of a tangent about all the different things that you hate about the college. The interviewer isn't necessarily looking for you to say that the college is perfect and there's nothing that you change, but you want to use it as an opportunity to address any actual concerns that you may have in quite a respectful way. You want to maintain the position that despite any concerns you have, it's still a place that you really want to go to. So, you know, someone's answer might be, for example, I really hate this college. I really hate that the college does not offer any ensuite rooms and that there's no ovens in the kitchen. The college is too far from the center of town, and I probably won't make any friends there. So when you actually hear this response, it makes it feel like it's way too negative and way too critical of the college. There's no balance to it. There's nothing, and it's also positioned in quite a like definitive way. So it doesn't actually give you a sense that you want to go there. Whereas Shahad's answer is perhaps a bit better.
So, for example, I might say something like, compared to all other colleges, this is a place that I felt would be the most suited to me. However, I do have some concerns about how I might be accepted within the college community and whether I'll be able to find people that will have similar interests to me. I actually also really like one of the points that someone mentioned. I wish there were more societies that could reflect the law and
Mm,
humanities students. So if you say something like that, you could be like, actually looking at the societies, I don't see many that reflect law and humanities students. However, coming onto the college, I think, it might be a good idea for me after I get accustomed to how everything works to maybe set up a society with a few people that I meet. They will actually see that you're willing to contribute to the environment within the college. They might not have a society, but if they pick you, they will now have one. So you've managed to turn a question that might seem really challenging into a positive, convincing them to choose you.
yeah, that's actually a really good point. Like you want to work with it. So on to the next part. Um, so if the interview, go on, Shahad, sorry.
No, it's okay. So if the interviewer tells you, tell me about yourself, I'd rather not since I need a job. I actually really like this. I also hate talking about myself. And what if I talk about myself and then they didn't want me? So it's definitely a negative part. But you do want to be honest as well. Honesty is important, not in a really bad way. So don't tell them that, you hate the subject and you don't want to study it. That will definitely not get you in. But an Oxbridge interview is really supposed to measure your intelligence and your personality, not necessarily your knowledge. So if you don't know something, it's okay. You can be honest, you can admit it. Now, even if you try to pretend to know, remember, they're world leading experts. They probably discovered whatever we're talking about. So they will be able to see right through you. So you want to be honest, and not knowing something is completely fine. It's not a problem. um so this is we had a quote about Socrates that we were going to say. I know that I know nothing, and literally after every lecture I go to, the more I listen to it and the more I go and learn about it, I'm like, I know nothing. I will never know enough. So understanding that and completely embracing it is literally what those world academics will do. If you think you know this subject, you don't. It's an
You
actual
don't.
lie.
You don't. You get humbled really quickly when you realize, actually, do I really know anything about anything? Um, so now we'll kind of go on to talking a bit about what uh, Oxbridge Mind offers. So we have these online courses which vary across loads of different scenarios for each section. With each individual section covering each subject, as well as having hours of teaching from specialists. So there's one-to-one tutoring that is available, as well as having one-to-one mocks with teachers that are from the university that you're applying to and the subject you're applying to. So it's really tailor-made. So here is the link. Feel free to kind of copy and paste that or take screenshots. Shad, are you able to copy and paste that into the chat in case people want to?
Yeah, So that's the
that.
10% code for our online course. If you signed up with the code, you will get 10% off. And it's really kind of about award-winning Oxbridge interview tutorials, lots of practice questions online, and specific tutorials for each course. If you were thinking, about some specific practice questions, some specific scenarios that might come up, this is the perfect kind of course to take you through and break down that interview process for you. So I'm just going to, as Shadia suggested, paste in that link for you guys. I don't want to copy it wrong.
And while Shad's doing that, I'll talk to you a little bit about kind of the tutoring as well. So you can get hours of personalized premium Oxbridge tuition. You can also get interview tutorials, interview practice questions, as well as interview mocks. So kind of all of the different things we talked about in preparation, they essentially will offer. And again, I will try and copy the link into the chat. I hope everyone can see that. And you can get trials for 50% off. So feel free to join the link or give them a call.
So someone did ask what's the difference between these two. So one of them is actual one-to-one tutoring, whereas the other one is actually a full online course that will take you through different scenarios, what's the ideal way to answer them, and things like that. So the course is slightly different from the one-to-one tutoring, where you can actually just do mock interviews with a tutor or kind of go through and break down your answers and have a mock with a tutor as well. So slightly different versions of preparation, whichever one you kind of prefer.
Yeah. So before kind of the final slide, we'd love if you left us some feedback. The best review will get a free mock interview, so really recommend giving it a chance. And also just feel free to give us a thumbs up in the chat once you've done the review. It's really helpful for us and how to improve, and you might get a free interview out of it as well.
If you mention our names as well, if you wanted specific feedback, that would also be really nice. So for me, Shahad and Shadia, that's the link. We've put it in there if you didn't want to scan the QR code. To be honest, personally, I don't like QR codes, but I put the
don't
link in
either.
the chat for you guys. In my phone, it takes so long. I have to take a picture and everything.
Yeah, it's so long.
Anyway, we put the link for you as well in the chat. So feel free to go on there. And once you have, it would be great if you leave us a thumbs up. And then afterwards, we'll have a slide where we can have another Q&A in case you had any particular questions for us that we didn't get to answer.
Yes. So finally, if there's any quick questions that anyone wants to ask, feel free. I know we're ending this quite abruptly, but we did have a really long Q&A section before, which took up a bit of time. But if you do have any questions, you can just pop them on the chat, and we will see. How long will the interview last? It varies college by college, subject by subject, but usually they're not. I think it's in total around 50 minutes worth of interview time. But that can be like 20 minutes, 30 minutes, 25 minutes, 25 minutes. It just depends.
So they don't necessarily ask you a question that is like, think critically. It will be more like they're trying to see if you have that skill when you're answering individual questions.
What do you say when they ask you about yourself, your hobbies or skills or your characteristics? Be honest with them. Usually they're not going to really ask you about like, oh, like, are you good at teamwork or whatever, things like that. But they could ask you about your hobbies and your extracurriculars. They just want to see how you are kind of as an all-round person. So I did get asked like, oh, what do you guys do? Kind of in your spare time and things like that. And you just be honest with what you do. If you like watching documentaries, if you like going to theatre, etc., etc. If anyone needs to leave, you can feel free to go. It was lovely doing this, and we wish you the most amount of luck on your interviews. Hopefully it all goes well, and maybe we'll be seeing some of you guys in Cambridge.
Good luck, everyone, and thank you so much for attending. Please remember to fill in our feedback forms. That would be amazing. And have a lovely evening, everyone. Thank you.
Thanks for coming, guys.
I think we've reached kind of like the end, so we can end the meeting here. And again, good luck, everyone.
Bye.